Board Gamers Anonymous, special episode 222, Game of Thrones Games. We'd like to thank all our Patreon backers for helping us bring you a brand new episode, especially Peter, Jason, and Lyle. You guys rock. Welcome to Board Gamers Anonymous, the podcast of board gamers and the insane fun we have at the table together. This is Chris.
This is Anthony.
And this is Jason.
Jason's here.
Hey!
I think you took a wrong turn, man. This is not. You went left.
I saw Game of Thrones, and I'm like, get out of my way. I'm coming on this episode. That is happening.
Yes, I saw that post. You were saying, especially, hold my coffee cup. I'm jumping on this thing.
Hold my Starbucks cup.
Or hold my water bottle, or whatever random anachronism you could hold so that you could jump on this episode.
Seriously, thank you guys for making a little bit of space so we can geek out.
Yeah, it's about time. Yeah, I mean, obviously, a good chunk of you guys have listened to Jason and myself over on Every Night is Game Night. But for those of you who have not, I have another podcast. Jason does most of it. So
Anthony started it when Board Gamers Anonymous went monthly. He had a podcasting void in his heart. And then around episode 6, he put out the call and he says, help me. I have to be on the show with somebody. And he was good enough to have me on. And we now are just past around episode 140 of Every Night is Game Night. So yeah, we've been trying to make this happen, BGA, ENG, and crossover, and really happy to do it. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's finally about time. And this is a perfect topic for it because the last 6 weeks, at least, anytime you and I have talked, as well as Chris and I, it's been like, oh, this show, man. Oh, man, this show. So it's a good chance to talk about some good Game of Thrones stuff.
Absolutely. So if you don't know, we are going to be talking about Game of Thrones, the television show, obviously touching on the books, and especially getting into all of the board games and the card games that are based upon all of this great content. So just a little bit of spoiler warning right up front. We may trip over some spoilers along the way. So if you're not finished up with the television show, or if you haven't gotten a chance to read the books and you want to keep all that secret, you may want to jump ahead to another episode and hold this one back for a later time. But let's actually get into Game of Thrones, the TV show, just a little bit, because I think that we need to get something off our chest about the show before we can move forward. And so a little catharsis, Anthony and Jason. Who wants to start off our group therapy session here?
Oh, man. I think we're all pretty much in the same boat, maybe with like slightly different ups and downs. I know talking to you guys, there's been episodes some of us hated that others didn't mind and vice versa. But this last season was, it was a marathon, I tell you what.
Well, it was a sprint. That should have been a marathon. That was the problem.
I know, but it felt like a marathon dragging myself to the couch every week. I don't...
So, okay. I guess introducing the context in which we understand the show. So I'm a book reader, and I read the books in like the early 2000s. So after Storm of Swords came out, so had to wait for Feast of Crows, and then had to wait for Dance of Dragons, and then so I've been steeped in this lore, and I'm just a geek for it. I can tell you exactly what the house words are of all the houses in Dorne. I could tell you the house phrase words and the sigil, and I'm insane for this stuff. So I can separate the show of the books. The show's not going to do the same things as the books. Fine. It's basic. And then when they went past the books, it basically became fan fiction of like, okay, all right, this is great. Game of Thrones. Somebody who has money is finishing the books. So people who don't know the books are, which actually I had someone today I was talking to did not realize that the books aren't finished. And they're like, the books aren't finished? It's like, yeah, that's part of the problem. So once you get past the books, it just turned into, okay, let's focus on the characters. Like right now, there's so much stuff that dropped off, and then let's just focus on Jon and Dany, and these are our characters. And to me, that's kind of where the show took a left turn, because I don't know how you guys felt about like the actors and the situations, but I just felt like Jon and Dany were just ugh.
Yeah, I mean, they're just plain oatmeal, man. They're not particularly... they never were, and I don't know if it's just like the showrunners didn't realize that those particular roles would be so important over the course of 8 seasons, or who knows? It's just I don't know, that the chemistry, the magic that you got with some of the other actors in the early seasons who died, it's just not there, right?
Yeah, I think for me, not having read the books, but coming to the books later and just catching up on all the book content, the show was really my introduction. And then I followed up with the books between the different seasons. And in general, it was a very interesting dynamic experience. My whole family watches the show. And sometimes that's awkward, but let's skip that for the moment. And just in general, it was just a phenomenon. You know, the whole idea of the Red Wedding and all the different major events that went on, the fact that everybody was watching it. And then there was so many YouTubes and podcast people out there that talking about the show, enjoying it, talking about different theories and how many things may work out. And obviously us with board games kind of getting involved in the content. I remember early on playing the card game and going, Anthony, is this a spoiler? Is this a spoiler? Is
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
And at some point he spoiled the show for me, but let's skip ahead on that too. But yes, at some point it was the best television I've ever seen in my entire life. So dynamic, so gripping, so well produced, so well acted, so well written. It was phenomenal. I didn't think that television could do that. And then, as Jason was saying earlier, you know, at some point the show just took a dramatic turn. It became fan fiction. And I think it was around the time that Arya just had her little arc and it just didn't make any sense what she was doing. And she became like a superhero. And I love her. I love the character. I love the actress, but it just didn't make any sense. And then from there on in, I think it was like season 5, season 6, season 7, and obviously the end, if you want to call that a season, it was just like really, really expensive fan fiction, which I was okay to have, but I was overall disappointed.
And even like that towards the latter half, like we still got that episode where Cersei blows up the Sept, which was, I thought it was awesome. That was really cool.
That was really cool.
So you still got moments, so they still strung you along. It would be one thing if it was just bad all around and it was like, all right, fine, forget it. I don't have to finish this. But they kept on kind of like mixing in the good stuff and the rough stuff and everything. It's like, all right. And especially just when you focus on the political and the King's Landing and the, you know, the interactions with Tyrion and Varys, like that was great. You know, that was when the show was at its best. Like, did you guys see the little, what was it, the YouTube montage of, you know, the cast members were all disappointed in the show.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, how do you think your character ends? You're like, I don't know.
Grumble.
Yeah.
I mean, it says everything. And I think Conleth Hill, who plays Varys, says it like the best, where he says, you know, I felt like I just stepped into a different show. And there was so many moments I was looking forward to, like when I found out that Littlefinger died. I wish I would have had a moment to just think about that and, you know, and play that forward. And then at the end, I don't even know what happened. And then at the very end, he was happy, like cutting Bird about Dragon. But like when the actors are kind of, well, seriously, like when the actors, because it happened in The Walking Dead too, where like the show got so nutty that the actors were like, okay, I need to make up my own fiction to make this make sense in my head. Because when the actors, like they lost the train of thought because the double D just kind of went faster. It's like, okay, we have to make Star Wars, so we got to wrap this up. I guess, I don't know. You know, they got tired of spending the last 10 years of their life. More power to them if they want to like move on. But it just, they pressed the accelerator. They want us to get to the end. You know, there was some good parts, but man.
Yeah, I think there's been some general information passed around that HBO is willing to do more seasons, but obviously D&D wanted to move on to other things. Obviously, some of the actors wanted to move on to other things.
Kit Harington was done. He's like, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I also don't know if he would have stayed on if the show was at the same quality that it originally was, but that wasn't going to happen with the books not being produced. And D&D was like the Zack Snyder of television, where like they could adapt, you know, book content tremendously well and give you some great moments and some great scenes. But as far as developing characters and writing stories, it wasn't their thing, clearly. So overall disappointing, but still a phenomenal event and a tremendous book series. And hopefully George wraps it up quickly and well. And maybe one day, far, far in the future, they'll come back and give a true version of the book straight through to the end. All right, so that's our general feelings about Game of Thrones. We could go on for another, 6 or 8 seasons about it. We want to get on with the episode because there's a lot of good stuff. So Anthony, why don't you bring us up to date on what's going on with BGA?
All right, guys, you know the drill. Every week we got a contest winner. Last week's winner was Rico. This week's winner is Brian. Brian's actually a longtime backer who just recently in the last couple months upgraded to the producer level. So Brian, I'm going to hit you up real quickly. You'll be getting a game of your choice from Game Surplus out in the mail here in the next few days. Congratulations.
Hey, congratulations, Brian.
All right. Yeah. So like I said, if you are on Patreon, first of all, thank you. If you're a backer, if you're not and you're interested, we have a lot of different backer levels. You can start out at even just $1. It's just super helpful for us. And you can hop in the Slack group and participate in those conversations and help us pick new topics and nominate games for these lists. If you do jump up to the producer level, you are automatically entered into this contest every single month. And we've now had something like 15 winners. That's 15 games given out over the last 3 months. And we're going to keep doing it every single week as long as we have the backers there to support us. So thanks to everybody who does that. And make sure you check it out if you're interested in contests or the extra episodes or just helping us out and making sure we can bring you some awesome content every week.
Yeah, it does mean a lot to everyone here and obviously helps support BGA and every night's game night. All right, Anthony, what about a contest for everyone? What about that?
Yeah, I mentioned this last week, and I threw it up on Facebook and Twitter and in our groups. And that's the World Cup episode that we do every 4-ish years, and then again the year after that, because we got the Men's World Cup and the Women's World Cup. So we do our bracket. This year we're doing kind of a spin on what we did back in March and doing kind of an alternate history. So think games like Scythe or Spirium. You know, it's the real world, but not as you'd recognize it or remember it. And we have a lot of different games that have been nominated already, and I'm kind of combing through BGG and pulling more together. So here in the next week, I'm going to throw that up as a bracket. You'll be able to pick which games you think are going to win each of those groups and then which ones you think will win overall. And whoever gets closest in the end is going to win a game from the brackets. So anybody can enter, backer or not, listener or not. I'll be posting this up everywhere. So make sure you keep an eye out for that and get your picks in. It'll be up until about the first or second week of June when we record that episode. So we'll have that up here in the next 2 days.
Yeah, please check out our Facebook account because you can add games right now. So please jump on there. Let us know what your favorite alternate universe world kind of thing is. I really like this kind of dynamic where it's like, hey, it's modern day, but there's some crazy thing, which tends to be a mechanic or some kind of unobtainium in the game where everyone's trying to either capture it or produce it or utilize it or something or another to it. All right, so that's what's going on with BGA. Gentlemen, let's get into some of the fun stuff that's going on with board gaming. Let's talk about the upcoming and soon-to-be nominees and award winners. Anthony?
Yep. So we did Origins a few weeks back, which we always have fun with because they're silly and not very good.
They've gotten better. They have gotten better over the last couple of years.
That is true. It was a lot funnier like 4 years ago when it was literally complete nonsense. Yeah. They make a little more sense now. So now we're getting to like the serious stuff. And there was a couple sets of nominees released this week. So one is the big one, the big daddy, and that is the Spiel des Jahres series of awards. So if you're not familiar with the Spiel des Jahres, if you're a new listener or just new to board games, this is the German game of the year. So this is games that were published in Germany that the jury believed had good rules. And the game of the year itself is really light family fare, right? You look at these the first few times maybe and you're like, wow, these are not the games I'm playing. These are light games for families and children. They do have a slightly heavier game of the year. They call their Kennerspiel, the enthusiast game of the year. And those are kind of what we'd consider middleweight. And then they have Kinderspiel, which is children's games. So they have 3 nominees for each. And kind of just want to run through these. I mean, for the Spiel and the Kinderspiel, I don't think any of us have played more than like one of these, so not a lot to talk about, but it's always interesting to kind of run through.
Wasn't just one of the nominees?
It was, yeah. It was just one.
Just one is excellent. Have you guys not played it? It's really good.
I don't play a lot of party games. They just don't come out very often. So, and that's what all these are this year. It's just like party games and light card games, and that's not bad. It's just not my kind of thing.
It's because like you get these it's basically a word game. You know, you write a word and there's clue kind of interchange, and I just feel like a lot of times there's either that over competitive like Pictionary, like oh I hate you, and you get like more mad than actually than playing, or there's some like weird rules wrinkle that makes it different, quote unquote. for whatever reason, Just One just kind of strips a lot of that down and makes it very accessible to the table. I really enjoyed it. It's so easy to play. You can like, jump in, do a couple of words and leave. It's really good. I mean, considering I haven't heard of other stuff, then I'm kind of rooting for this one just by default.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're alone. Like looking at Reddit and BGG, this seems to be the one everybody thinks will win.
Yeah.
Which of course means it won't win because that's not how it works.
Yeah. It's also funny that it's the same designers as Seventh Continent. So this is what they're doing when they're not designing some giant, massive, sprawling adventure game.
Oh, I did not know that. That is insane. That's such a different thing. Oh my god,
it's amazing.
All right. I mean, Chris, have you played this one? You play a lot of party games.
No, I can't say I have. I haven't seen it even at the game night.
Look at that. I gave you guys it at the table. We're not even doing at the table. And there you go.
I know, right? I still won't pick it up, but if it's there, I'll try to play it now. All right. So that's the first one. Then there's Llama from Reiner Knizia. It's an acronym for something, but it's in German, so I don't know what it means. And this is just a light card game. It's from Amigo, so it's got those very like 6 NIMT style cards. Don't know a whole lot about it. And I'm sure neither of you guys have played that, right?
No.
German import.
No way.
No. Okay. Let's just making sure before I run on. And then the last one was a little surprise to me for a variety of reasons, and that's Werewords from Bezier. Not the least of which is that there was some controversy around this game earlier, right?
Yeah, there was a situation between Bezier Games and between Oink Games that this was a game, and Bezier Games was trying to kind of rebrand it. And supposedly emails went back and forth, and supposedly there was agreements and non-agreements, and it was a big mess for quite some time. And if you go on Board Game Geek or Reddit, you can find the whole conversation along with emails. So it's a good game. We reviewed it on the podcast. I like it, but I'm still really surprised that this is up for Spiel. But nonetheless, decent game.
Yeah, I mean, presumably that's all worked out. I haven't heard anything about it recently, and it's again, it was all supposedly, but it is an interesting game to make it on here with all that controversy that was there at least. All right, the Kinderspiel nominees. I've usually most years I've heard of none of these, and then they'll all come out in the next year from Haba and the like. So we have Fabulantica, Go Gecko Go, and Valley of the Vikings. Anything? Anybody?
We're good.
No?
We're good.
Nothing. Nope. And then the Kinderspiel, which is kind of more in our wheelhouse. These are the types of games we review. And we've actually reviewed all 3 of these. Specifically, I've reviewed all 3 of these on the podcast. This might be the first time I owned all 3. So it's Carpe Diem, Stefan Feld's most recent, Detective, the big app, the deduction game from Ignacy Trzewiczek and the Portal crew, and then Wingspan, which I'm sure you guys maybe have heard of. I don't know.
What is this Wingspan you speak of? Is the first time I'm hearing about this?
Yeah, I mean, nobody owns it, but it
go.
is very popular.
10,000 people own it. That's exactly how many people own this.
True. Oh, man. I got one of those controversial copies that got dumped on Amazon. Yeah, I like all 3 of these games. I own all 3 of them. I've gave them all decent reviews. I'm a little surprised at the Stefan Feld. I'm wondering if this is just like a, hey, we should give Feld an award kind of thing. This is not his best game. It's not a bad game.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's kind of like how, speaking of Game of Thrones being the episode, it's kind of like how they got the Emmy for season 5, which season 5 was not good. and a lot of, there was a lot of mashups in there, and people like, so in Lord of the Rings, same thing with Lord of the Rings. The 3rd movie is the one that swept all the Emmys. Not the strongest movie in that quartet. It's like, okay, this is important. We need to kind of give a nod. It sounds like with Stefan Feld, that's kind of a little bit of action going on there.
Yeah, it's almost like they're like, ooh, he made a game light enough for us to nominate. Let's do it.
Yeah.
We have to get him in there. It's a perfectly fine game. But I mean, it is the better of the 2 games he released last fall. I'll say that much.
And aside from because there's a lot of, obviously people have feelings about Wingspan, and they've, feelings about the print run, they're disappointed. And also, it become this kind of flashpoint because it's a female designer and female artist. So it's like, okay, is this really good, or am I supposed to like it because of the social justice warriors? And like, there's so much like around it that is built, with Reddit and BGG and everything. But just at the heart of it, it's a fun design. It's not the best engine building card game in the world, but it's fun and it's good, and it's beautifully produced. Stegmaier did amazing job with it, And Elizabeth Hargrave is a really sweet gal. We've had her on the ENGN a couple times for interviews and everything. She also has another game coming out from a Button Shy, and now like with a Spiel nomination, maybe even a win. I mean, it's just a great story. So I'm really happy that Wingspan is getting the nod.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that game is kind of perfectly weighted for this award too. Like it's right in that wheelhouse, like complexity wise.
Yeah, and I'll jump in too because obviously the game's blown up so big that, there's always that negative pushback, as Jason was mentioning. But I played it. It's a really good game. It's a solid game from top to bottom. It's not going to, radically change the industry, but there is really nothing that you can kind of criticize about the game, so to speak. I mean, there's always something you can kind of nitpick, but the artwork is fantastic. The scientific knowledge that kind of goes into the game and how the birds really thematically kind of activate is fantastic. And I played the game with bird watchers, like hardcore professional bird watchers. And they're like, yeah, that's true. And that's true. And then that's why that does that. And I'm just like, oh, they really went the extra step. And when a game is truly thematic in its gameplay, that's just something fantastic. Whether you like it or not, or it's your theme or not, it's completely a different story. But this is a really, really phenomenal game as far as accomplishing what it set out to do. And I think it's going to win pretty much everything for the next year or so.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see. I do want to point out, too, because we didn't mention it yet, is Detective being in here is interesting because it is an app-driven game. You cannot play it without some form of technology.
Yeah, that's really surprising.
It's not a game. Like, I mean, it is kind of a game, but it's like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, only with app and like a little bit more depth and stuff. I wouldn't even do you feel like you win or lose that game? Do you feel like that this is a contest against something? I mean, I feel like I kind of have a feeling of lumping the case solvers with, some of these other experiences. It just does. It feels like a little bit apples and orange-ish. I don't know what you guys think.
I will say I was very surprised. And this was one of my favorite games last year. I agree with you. It's more of a extended experience. Like I wouldn't call an escape room a game, for example, even though you're trying to solve a puzzle and win it.
Right.
This kind of feels the same. And if I was going to pick one of the two app-driven deduction games to be nominated for a Spiel, I would almost assume they go with like Chronicles of Crime because it at least feels a little bit more like a game and it has some more innovative stuff to it. Not to say I love Detective. It's a fantastic game. I picked up the expansion, looking forward to playing it, but I was decently surprised to see it here.
The heat is on.
Absolutely.
The home street.
Great theme.
If you don't know what that is, then go and check out Eddie Murphy's film catalog from the 1990s and 80s and stuff.
Yeah. All right. So that's a few minutes on the Spiels. That's the big one. That's the big thing that everybody waits for every year. Last year's winners were the Quacks of Quedlinburg, and just that one blew up. It's the Kenner Spiel and Azul, of course, and those things fly off the shelves now if they weren't already. So the other awards that we wanted to talk about just really quick, because there are like a dozen or more categories, maybe 50 games in total. So we're not going to run through all of them. That'd be a whole other episode. But this one is one we're actually involved in because we helped nominate these, and that's the Dice Tower Awards. Mm-hmm. And these go up every year, the nominations in May, and they get announced at the Dice Tower Con in July. And generally speaking, every year I look at these and I'm like, yeah, this is good. I'm fine with this nomination list. And part of that is there's like 150 some odd people who do the nominations, and they are all on podcasts or in the industry somehow. And we kind of narrow things down very carefully from a very large list. And the other part of it is just like there's a lot of categories, so things get segmented out pretty well. So I mean, is there anything that kind of jumped out at for either of you guys on the list that was like, yeah, I'm glad that's there, or hey, I think that game's going to win everything, or any surprises?
I mean, I think it's going to be Root. I think that's going to be the answer to pretty much every category you're going to see this year. So this year going to next year's Wingspan, last year going to this year is going to be Root. I think the art design and the whimsical nature of the game is really drawing a lot of people in. Leader Games did a fantastic job with getting that game out to the public, which was not easy because they are a super tiny company. And the fact that the game really handles the asymmetry of the different factions is tremendous. And it's really has a good backbone as far as like, it's actually a war game, an insurgents kind of coin game here. So you have almost every type of gamer actually playing this game. I don't know if it has the legs long term to kind of keep at the table, just because it is a pretty rough teach, especially people who don't play games normally. But otherwise, I think Root's going to run away with pretty much everything this year.
It swept up the Golden Geek, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think it's looking at 54 in the overall rank for BGG. I thought it would be higher because just you look at some of the big games like Gloomhaven shot up to first, and then looking at Terraforming Mars is number 4, and these are the games games of the year, quality games. And so speaking to Chris's point, maybe the accessibility is kind of limiting that upward rocket ship into the top of the charts. But I mean, I have to agree with you guys. In every category that Root is nominated in, it'll probably take it.
Yeah, and I think Root's going to have that thing. Like Gloomhaven had that second printing that came out like a year and a half after the first one, the second Kickstarter that made millions of dollars. So did Root. Root made a bunch of millions of dollars earlier this year, and they have games coming out with expansions at the end of the year, which is obviously after award season. But I think we're going to see it jump a little bit higher on those rankings as the number of owners doubles in the next 18 months or so. I can't think of anything to disagree with you on. Like, just looking through the list, it's nominated for about half of these awards, and most of those I could see. There's a few in here that are kind of slam dunks, like Best New Designer. I don't see how it's not Wolfgang Warsch.
Yeah. That'll be insane.
After everything he did last year. Game of the Year, yeah, Root, almost certainly. Theming would be interesting, because I don't know that Root really stands a chance there. So maybe Western Legends or Stuffed Fables. But yeah, I think you're right, Chris. I think it's probably the year of Root.
I always look for the cooperative games. If you guys listen to Every Night is Game Night, you guys know I'm a big co-op fan. Probably my favorite category. The Dice Tower nominees here just tell me what a poor year it was overall for just classic pure co-ops. Like, we have 2 case solving games, 2 basically party games, and a children's game. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And one of those may or may not actually be a game.
Yeah.
So who knows?
I think Anthony's referring to The Mind, which we talked about it on a recent episode. I think we both concluded that, yes, it's a game. Sure.
Kinda. It's in the middle. I could go either side of the fence, but yeah, it's a funny one. I love the arguments. People get so heated over it.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. So it wasn't my favorite year. This was not my favorite year for games. Like, I mean, I guess award shows really, or awards anything, are just like the best way to do it is like a chance to talk about the year and a chance to kind of check in on like what it is. I mean, I heard you guys' year end episode. I think you are like, when you assess 2018 as a year, you kind of said it was like, good year, not the best. And I think this poll kind of solidifies that judgment.
All right, now for our feature review, we're going to take a look at the best and, in fact, the only Game of Thrones games that are out there. So if you love the series, or you are so-so about the series, or maybe you're interested in some really great games, we're going to talk about all the games that came out that are Game of Thrones based, whether it's the books, the TV show, or some odd products in between. So we're going to let you know if those games are a buy and you should run out and pick those games up, if those games are a dodge and you should avoid them at all cost, if those games are, in fact, the dreaded burn and you should burn down an entire kingdom just to make yourself feel better. Yeah, that's a thing you could do too. For no particular reason.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. With not... So there. All right. So Anthony, why don't you start us off with the games that are all about the thrones that are based in cardboard, my friend?
Yes, let's do it. I'm going to run through 4 or 5, not necessarily smaller, but maybe lower profile Game of Thrones games, and let you know if they're worth picking up or not, or if there's an alternative maybe. So the first of these is a Game of Thrones Catan, Brotherhood of the Watch. Now, I was somewhat skeptical when they announced that there was a Game of Thrones Catan coming out. It seemed a little cynical, slapping the theme on there. And maybe it still is, but the game is halfway decent. It takes the kind of core formula of Catan, and it makes it work in this new format, where you are on the Night's Watch and you are jostling to succeed the Lord Commander and become the leader of the Night's Watch. But to do that, you need to do a few different things. You need to, help build out the gift. So do your part to produce goods that will feed the Night's Watch, but also to repel the wildlings from the wall. And so there are mechanics in the game where the wildlings are going to come at the wall throughout the game. You're going to be recruiting people from the Night's Watch to man the walls, and there's kind of a shared role here. So everybody kind of has to keep the wall intact. There's no shared failure. It's not a co-op by any means, but it is something that everybody has to work towards. The victory points, like any Catan game, are hidden and come one at a time, and whoever gets to 10 is going to win. But it can end in a couple of different ways. So you're going to gain points based on kind of the network you build out, classic Catan, but also for hiring guards on the wall, buying the development cards that increase your prestige, safeguarding all that stuff that you built out in the gift. And then if for whatever reason nobody gets to 10 points, the game will still end at some point if the wildlings breach the wall 3 times throughout the game. And then you just see who has the most points or the most guards on the wall. So it's interesting. I mean, the production quality here is really high. The artwork's fantastic. Even like the painting on the little Catan tiles is very nice. Get a little miniature moving around the board. The cost, however, is way too high for any Catans.
I was waiting for that. Thank you. It is $80 for Catan. Come on now.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, you got this nice, beautiful board. You've got all the Game of Thrones artwork. You've got miniatures and plastic bits that you don't really need that replace the wood from the original. Even the resource cards look amazing. The artwork on those is amazing, but it's Catan. You can buy a copy of Catan for $25-$30. Don't spend $80 on this. And it's on sale occasionally because nobody's buying it because it's $80. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, have either guys played this one?
I have not played it. I mean, I'm a price guy. Like, I mean, it's Asmodee, so and it's Catan. Like, who is giving out review copies of Catan? That's completely impossible. So if you're gonna just buy it at cost or $80, and you can get it like cheaper and cool stuff and everything, but does this do enough to separate itself from an engine that I've been playing since 2001?
No.
So I'm okay on that.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, this game is super expensive, but the worst thing is it's super expensive at Target. So every time I go in Target and I see it here, I'm like, and when are you going to just drop your price? Because no one's buying you for $80. That's a crazy amount of money to play for, as you said, Jason, like a variation of Catan, which has been around forever, and a Game of Thrones theme that's, more or less pasted on in some respects. And in fact, I think you have to pick up the expansion to play as Jon Snow, which seems like just really milking the game for money.
Yeah, they definitely held some content back for the expansion. I mean, it's a 5-6 player expansion, which is also separate for the base game. But
look, Anthony, do it. You know nothing about expansions.
Tell my wallet, man. All right. So Game of Thrones Catan, if you're a super hardcore fan, still wait for a price drop.
Although,
then
actually, before you even jump in there, you did mention one thing, which was the art. It's going to come up a couple of times, especially like in the Asmodee Fantasy Flight universe. The art is gorgeous, and they take a lot of the art that was developed even before the show was a thing. And, so like Daenerys and all your favorite characters are all like, how George kind of imagined them. And you can actually get that art in separate books. So I have a couple of those books right now, and they're straight from Fantasy Flight. And Fantasy Flight kind of litters a lot of their games, this game included, and then the games we're going to talk about with that art. It is, go get those books. I really do recommend that.
Oh yeah, no, it's gorgeous. And I love that so much of the artwork in these games is still based on like the books and the artist's interpretation of those characters, because you get some really cool, fantastical looking stuff. That's not just like a artist rendering of Kit Harington.
Yeah. Like people don't realize what the Iron Throne is. So like the Iron Throne is, like it's a big thing. It's like, it's how many swords in the Iron Stones look like 12 or something. It's not 1,000. In the series, it's 1,000 swords, and it's this big monstrous thing, and you can actually see it represented in some of the games and in the book. It's like little things like that are just, I really geek out about that. It's so cool.
Yeah, I got a copy of, we'll talk about this game in like 10 minutes, but the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game, and as one of the Kickstarter bonuses was the Iron Throne from the book. So like the miniature is like 8 inches high. So I went on eBay and I bought that because I'm like, I want that throne. So it is currently sitting on my desk as a paperweight. And it's massive. Like if you put a miniature on it, it's, like 12, 15 feet high. All right. So let's move to the next game. Again, another thematically thin one here. And this is not the artwork we were just talking about. This is a Game of Thrones, Hand of the King. This is a Bruna Cathala game. And the only reason anybody talked about this when it came out was the artwork. It is this kind of stylistic, cartoony take on the characters. And some of them look like their show counterparts as cartoons. Some of them don't. It's a bit of a mix, but it's cartoons. It's like almost like a Gendy Tarkovsky kind of a look to it, like Samurai Jack. And I like
the guy that did Acquisitions Incorporated, right?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot of work. So, and the other stuff wasn't controversial because it wasn't Game of Thrones, but it is very unique. The game itself is super simple. You have a giant grid of cards, and you're going to move the Varys card around just in any direction on the 6x6 grid. You stop it on a specific spot. You take the token and the character. If you get more characters from a single house, because all the cards are marked by their houses, then you get the banner for that. If you get the final character from a house, you get a bonus from these different companions that are out there. And there's special powers that come with that. So it's almost an abstract game. And I say almost, but it really is an abstract game with some special powers associated. And you're just looking at Game of Thrones characters while you do it. I still like it as a game. Is it a Game of Thrones game? Not really. I mean, thematically speaking. But it's a fun, quick card game that I think if you look at the rating on BGG, it's definitely dinged a little bit because people just didn't like how it looked. Chris, you played this one with me, right?
Yeah, it's a very basic game. I do like the artwork. It's kind of pretty quirky, and basically it's just kind of a set collection game. It's fine. I mean, it didn't murder anyone's family, so to speak. Yeah. So I get the idea that it's a pasted on theme, and I'm just, I guess I would have more of an uproar and disappointment with this if the season didn't wrap up almost like this game where it's like, hey, you just want to see the characters you love, right? And you're like, yeah, well, here you go. Here's a game where people's faces are on things and you match them up. All right. So I think strangely enough, it is a perfect depiction of the final episode, and so to speak. So yeah, this is something I won't come back to, but I wouldn't throw it away if it was happened to be part of my collection.
Yeah, and it's probably the least Game of Thrones thing on this list, but it has Absolutely. The name, so we mentioned it. So.
Yes.
All right, next game up. This is another re-theme. This is Game of Thrones: The Iron Throne. This is the Game of Thrones version of Cosmic Encounter. And I mean, that makes kind of perfect sense if you think about it. The reason I don't know why this game didn't take off, possibly just because it's a re-theme, possibly because they used photography from the show, which it always looks cheap, and maybe it's just because all those games back in the day were cheap and bad, and so now it's just in your head that they're going to be bad. But I had the same thought. I'm like, this is so thematic, like mechanically, it is pretty much just Cosmic Encounter, a game in which you are negotiating and bluffing and making alliances, working together, threatening people, trying to get people to join you against someone else. And at any point in time, it's just you versus someone else. And the game tells you who you're going to face. So the active players are defined by the game, but then who helps you and how they help you and when they help you is all kind of the meta game around the game. There are, of course, special powers that come with each of the characters, which correspond to who you're going to play. Instead of the little spaceships, you stack up little crowns on top of each other. They are pointy. Don't drop them. They hurt your feet. I don't know. This game didn't really do much for me. I like Cosmic Encounter. I don't love it, but it has a lot of charm to it because of the theme and the colorful artwork and the thousands of aliens you could be. This game takes all of that, boils it down, slaps on some photography from HBO and says, you like this still, right? And I don't know who this was for. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan.
It's for the mass market. It's really dumbed down. Like I did get a chance to play this once, and I'm like, just bring back Cosmic Encounter. I mean, if I'm gonna play that dumbed down a game, I'm gonna go straight to like a Taboo. You know, like, is this did this game, or something like mass market with like a reskin and give me a bunch of Game of Thrones type words on a card and let them guess. Like, this game does not give me more than an experience like that would.
Yeah,
Cosmic Encounter is already out there, and it's a fantastic game for what it does. So yeah, I would probably pick the Cosmic Encounter version up. But I guess if you were going to retheme something, it makes a lot of sense.
It does make sense thematically. I still don't like it. So like, it's just like, I don't know. All right. Next one up here is another retheme, but I do think this one works. And that's Battles of Westeros, a battle lore game. Now, this game isn't really available anymore unless you find one of the many clearance sales that still seem to happen, because people still seem to have this in stock, but it's been out of print for a while. This is the command and color system, and battle lore particularly, with Westeros kind of slapped onto it. And this game came out before the show even aired. So this came out back in 2010. So it is 100% based on the books, and all of the artwork, all the miniatures, all the characters and everything in it are based on that as well. And specifically, it takes the actual military conflicts from the books and recreates them in the board game. So the base game, this base box that you can get, it comes with several different scenarios. These are specific battles, and it'll tell you how the map's going to be laid out. The map is double-sided, and there's a whole bunch of overlays that you can put out there to kind of build it out however you want. And of course, you can build your own too. And then there are big box expansions. So the base game comes with Starks and Lannisters, but I think the Baratheons are also available as their own core box. And there's a couple others that came out in smaller, medium-sized boxes over the years. And you're going to have a leaders of some kind out of this leadership deck. So you've got Jaime Lannister could be on the Stark side, or on the Lannister side. You got Eddard Stark could come out on the Stark side. And if you've never played Command and Colors, it's basically you have a board broken down into different sectors, and then cards that tell you what you can do in each of those sectors. And of course, some special abilities that come out in the form of those leadership cards. So it's all about hand management and then the tactics that go into the battle itself. It's a lot of fun. I really, really like battle lore. And the battle lore, like Terranoth version that they put out, is better than this by a fair margin, because it's like a revamped second edition of those rules. But this is still good, especially if you like the books or just Game of Thrones in general. Now, there's going to be some stuff in here you probably wouldn't recognize if you've only watched the shows, because it is purely based on the novels. But I think it does a good job of not like overdoing it and dumping too much on you. It's a lot of fun. I wish it had stuck around. I feel like there's a lot they could have done with this, especially with the, if they'd shifted it over to like the show to get more of the stories and more of the battles towards the back end of that series. But of course, when this came out, all but one of the books had been released that are out now. So, it has all the battles from early on in the books.
We talked about Battle Lore Second Edition a lot, and how much we liked it, and how sad we were that the current game version of it kind of like stopped, and they're not producing anymore, and it went on like massive sale. And if you didn't get it, it's kind of done. I think if they would take the second edition, the Battle Lore Second Edition, and then retheme that in the Battle of Westeros, now you have dragons and you have zombies and other stuff that comes from the books. I think that might work really well as a basic game for Battle Westeros. Probably already have Battle Lore Second Edition, so probably not going to go back to this. But I guess if you have this game, it's worth having in your collection.
Yeah, I held on to it. It's still there. I don't play it, but I have it. So the next one here is the reason I probably wouldn't play it, and that's A Song of Ice and Fire tabletop miniatures game. This is the biggie. This is the current big, massive miniatures game based on A Song of Ice and Fire. And you can tell this one's based on the books because they don't use the name Game of Thrones. It's the only game on this list that doesn't use that. It is A Song of Ice and Fire. And I don't know that you can necessarily tell. I mean, other than the fact that there's more characters out there that would be recognizable if you've read them. But this is a full-blown miniatures game from Simon, designed by Eric Lang and Michael Chanel. And it is expensive. It is large. It has dozens of expansions. If you're a board gamer, you probably look at this and think, ugh, that's so much stuff, which is what I did when it was on Kickstarter, because too much stuff, right? It was hundreds of dollars. But the game itself does a really good job of kind of taking what makes miniature games so appealing. So the potential for large scale battles on these massive tables with hundreds of miniatures out there, and marries it with accessible mechanics that are board gamer friendly. The problem is just kind of how it's packaged in the end. So I think a lot of people have avoided this because it's very expensive and it's a 2-player game, right? Mechanically speaking, though, it has a lot of different unique things to it. So their activations alternate. People are constantly doing things. There's not like, I'll do all my stuff, you do all your stuff. It's like it's back and forth, right? Similar to like a lot of the card games. There's a rank system, so units can upgrade and get more powerful as the battle goes on. The tactics system provides a whole bunch of different things that you can do with specific resources that kind of run out over the course of the game. The heroes are there, and in some cases, they're less interesting than others. A lot of the times they just sit off the map, and maybe they have a power, but they don't do much despite having the miniature. Other times you can bring them onto the map. Like you can get your Jaime Lannister and throw him out there, and he can, wipe the floor with anybody around him. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun, and I really wish it was packaged in a way that was more board gamer friendly. Now, I know that's why not what they were trying to do. They were trying to build a new tabletop miniature game line, but there's just so much content here in this box, and that's just kind of the high overview. Like there's multiple different game modes. You could get the Night's Watch, you could get the Wildlings, you could get all these different factions that they're now releasing. And just so much content here to work through. I cannot get it out to the table because it is a 2-player miniature game and needs a lot of a table space to play, but it is really good. So if you're looking for miniatures in Game of Thrones, this is it.
What did they try here? Like, are they trying to horn in on like the Warhammer space? So like game stores that dedicated their back rooms to these big tables and everything to Warhammer and Robotech and the different big dudes in the map. Did they want this game to horn into that space, and is it doing so?
I mean, question one, yes, and they as much told us so. Like when we discussed it with them back at Gen Con last year, it's like, yeah, we want this to be big. We're doing event kits. We're doing all this stuff. Second answer, I don't think so. Like one of my local stores started doing a thing, and that lasted. Maybe they did 2 events, and not enough people showed up, and then they stopped doing them. Like it's. The Kickstarter was really the best way to get all the stuff. And it's just the classic CMON problem of if you backed it, you got this giant box of extra stuff. If you didn't back it, you don't get that stuff. But now you have kind of a competitive 2-player war game. People want all the stuff and they can't get it now. Combined with the fact that it's just very expensive to jump into it like any miniatures game. And so people who already play miniatures games have already invested in something. You're trying to get new people in. I don't know. I don't know what the market is for these, and all these companies keep doing it. Star Wars Legion was the same thing. Like no one's playing it. Seems it's a good game, but nobody's playing it. So why would I keep spending money on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame.
All right, Jason, you got one for us too, right?
I have probably my favorite of the Game of Thrones games. I am not normally a competitive dueling person. I'm a big co-op fan, but I mean the Game of Thrones living card game is, spoiler alert, I really, really like it. I've only played a couple of times. I just throw it out there, man. I don't keep the people waiting. I was like, okay.
We need the sizzle, man.
Wait, what happened to not rushing to a final conclusion right off the bat, man?
Yeah, let it develop. Nah, man, you get it. I'm just gonna serve it right hot and fresh.
We can't come to a really disappointing ending either.
You will not be disappointed with this one. I can guarantee it. If you like anything about like dueling card games, and this is it's exactly what it is. So it's a living card game. So there was a first edition, and first edition was just, oh my god. I mean, tons of expansions. You could probably get a whole sets for, I don't know. When they were first announced second edition, people would sell off their sets for like thousands of dollars. Okay, so you had a whole bunch of stuff. They changed some things for the second edition. I don't think if you happen to have the first edition, it's going to be that different. But the second edition, it's good too, and it's a good entry point. I think they wanted to reboot so that let people, kind of new people, trickle in, which is a perfectly fine goal. Because especially the first edition got very intimidating. So at the heart of it is. So in Magic the Gathering, you're kind of trying to destroy one another, and you can do a lot of manipulation, but at the end of the day, you have to kind of deal damage and hit points. This game does it a lot differently. This isn't a directly competitive game. What you're doing is, you have your deck. I think it's at least 60 cards that you have to have, and you can deck construct and put your decks together and everything. A very craftable game. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to get influence or power. Yeah, power I think is the main currency of the game. You're like the first faction to get 15 glory or power, or whatever you want to call that, is going to be the winner. And so every round you're going to go through various phases. So first you have your plot phase, which basically gives a meta to the round. So like every round is a little bit different. So like this round, you can only play this type of card, and that round you can only, if you play your big heroes, then something else happens. So every round feels a little bit different because of the meta that you play. So those are your plot cards. And then during the main phase, you're going to be summoning your heroes and heroes, villains, everybody. Like that's the great thing about a living card game. You can fit every single character, even like Sky has shave paint or the like weirdo characters that only book readers would know. You can fit into a card game like this. So then you play them, and then you're gonna kind of declare a combat against whoever. You can play this game as a melee format with multiple people. So then you can either fight them head up if your characters have that skill, the fighting skill, or you can do what's called influence, which is basically make them discard cards. So, there's two different ways, kind of emulating the fact that this is not like the Game of Thrones world is not this rock'em sock'em world. Like there's also backstabbing and chicanery. You only do so much in a card game to emulate that, but at least they kind of approach it differently. And then the third type of combat you could do is just basically power or dominance. I have the more glorious house, and therefore I get more points, quote unquote. So that's all you're doing every single turn. And the strategy is in how do you defend, how do you attack, how do you buff, how do I open launch a bunch of attacks and leave myself open to the other person's attacks? Do I what's in my hand, how can I buff what's coming out of there? And that's on a mechanical end. On a thematic end, there's some fun stuff that you can do. One of the games that I played, my opponent had the Lannisters and Joffrey came out, and Joffrey had this thing where like he got glory whenever he got to kill somebody, which is exactly what Joffrey would do. He gets glee every time he cuts off somebody's head, especially if they're not of your faction. So like if I think person I was playing had a bunch of Starks in his deck, and Joffrey murders Arya and Sansa and gets a bunch of glory. That's exactly what Joffrey would do in that particular case. And so there's these little thematic moments. It's not a thematic game, but there's enough thematic moments to make it satisfying for a Game of Thrones fan, and the gameplay is good too. So I'm not a guy that just goes into these competitive card games, but as a fan of the show, as a fan of if I were to like get into like a group that played this a lot, then I'll be really happy. Chris, I think you're a guy that played this game, right?
I did. I played the first edition a lot, and I really enjoyed it. As I mentioned earlier, like just trying to avoid some of the spoilers, but the card game really doesn't go out of its way to spoil anything for you. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of odd characters here, and obviously they're not depicted, directly in the show like they are in the artwork or in the book. So you can completely play the game. And if you're not looking very hard, you can kind of avoid those. But the game is so fun and dynamic, and you really do get to play that house. And as you mentioned, the characters, their power levels and what they can influence depends completely upon whatever their characteristic happens to be. So Jon Snow is going to be out there battling, where Sansa is going to be doing political intrigue kind of stuff. And that's really a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And they do a really good job of like, building up the combo. So like, the Baratheon deck, if you get, it's called kneeling, which is tapping your cards, which I really dislike how every game is forced to call tapping something different. It's really annoying. But like in this particular game, it kind of makes sense because if a card is kneeling, which means it's tapped, then like Robert Baratheon will get a bunch of buffs, and then Stannis Baratheon will give buffs, depending on how many cards are kneeling already. So like the game does a really good job. It's not just like a blind, I'm going to play a card, you're going to play a card. You can really get into the strategic combo ness of it. There's a reason why they rebooted it for a second edition. There's a reason why it's actually, it's not the most popular collective card game, but they keep on releasing sets, and it's a really, really awesome game. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And finally, we want to talk about the big daddy of all Game of Thrones games. That's Game of Thrones, the board game, second edition. Now, first edition came out quite some time ago. Never got a chance to play that edition, but second edition does streamline a lot of the rules in the board game. And basically, this is the board game of all of the great houses battling out. It's an area control game. It's somewhat dudes on the map, but it's not really so much about that. You are trying to conquer different castles and get a certain number in order to win. But at the same time, the game doesn't play like Risk. You really have to strategize the different things you're doing because you are managing supplies, you are managing how many troops you can have in each individual region. There's influence tracks throughout the game that are going to determine things like player order, and if you can break ties. Ties are actually very important in this game. And then there's combat bonuses. Yeah. So a lot of different stuff in the game. In addition, there's wildling attacks because of course there is. So everyone has to contribute, like in Game of Thrones, the Catan version, in order to keep them back and in order for everyone not to take major damage throughout the game. But basically, the game is all kind of circling around this planning phase. So in the planning phase, you're going to have your house, and your house is going to be represented by these really cool translucent color tokens. And you're going to have just your same starting place like you do on the map of Westeros. And you're going to play these tokens, and the tokens are going to designate what your troops or what your area is going to do. So you can march, you could defend, you could support not just your armies, but other people as well. You can raid, which takes out other people's tokens. You can consolidate power, which is going to help you muster units and score victory points towards the end. Then the action phase happens where these tokens flip over and the different actions take place, including combat. Combat's a little cumbersome. It's kind of like this 5-stage process where you have these pieces on the board, I have those pieces on my board, I have support tokens, you have support tokens, you have raid tokens, and then we play cards because cards. And the cards do things because now you need someone to lead the troops, and that's going to kind of throw things into a little bit of havoc. So throughout the game, you can and should negotiate with the neighboring houses in order to gain the most area control possible. And then just like every area control game, once somebody gets too far, you try to kind of bring them back. Now, the original base game is fantastic, but it is very, very long to play. This is a all-day, 6-hour type of game if you play with the full player count, which is highly recommended because if you leave a gap, that's going to give somebody a free space to kind of expand into without any challengers. Now, the expansion that just came out, Mother of Dragons, kind of takes care of that. So now that section is taken up by other players throughout the game, so you have some control over those different areas as the game goes on. The expansion also adds the Targaryens, right? So you will have Daenerys in the game, and you will have her dragons. And what's really cool about this expansion is she plays differently. Her dragons grow every other round, and she has to go certain places on the board, and because dragons can fly, they can go anywhere they want. And she gets to nuke a particular place in order to gain control of those regions. So there's an asymmetrical situation going on here. She's not trying to take over kingdoms in this situation. She's just trying to, I guess, capture allies and their allegiance, so to speak. There's also House Aaron that enters this game to make this an 8-player game if you have several days to play this game. And that changes
the like torturing yourself. Oh my God.
Yeah, it is a little torture, but not Ramsay Bolton level of torture. But it is a very long situation. But yeah, so 8 players is long. You can play with much less now because the way that the game handles those empty spaces where you actually control that situation. So you'll have vassals in those areas, and you control one and I control one, so the game balances out a lot better. Awesome. So I would always, always, always play with the expansion. That being said, this game is incredibly long, incredibly detailed. The rulebook is pretty difficult to get through, but once you play the game, once you're into the game, once you've played it once or twice, it is a very enjoyable experience but is an extremely long and dedicated process that does reap rewards as long as you can go through a long and dedicated process. So I would just give this game a play because I think you should play it before you buy it. Even if you are a hardcore Game of Thrones fan, maybe one day Fantasy Flight will have a revised edition like they have TI4. But until then, this is good. But as long as you have dedicated gamers who are willing to kind of really, really push through a challenging rulebook that they'll have to jump back to several times.
I mean, if you like diplomacy, I mean, this is basically, they talk about spiritual successor. I mean, this is a diplomacy variant, just like the card game is a Magic variant. And there are people who don't like those games, and
Sure.
if you don't like those games, if you don't like diplomacy, if you don't like the constant engagement, and I really do like that. Like, you can obviously do your move and, grab a soda and the board state will not change, but you might be missing out on opportunities to make an alliance. And there are people, like, I've seen people just completely laser in. I played this game for a month or so, like every week, just like, because it's the same people, they just loved it.
Yes.
And it was like a New York meetup and everything. And it was a whole meetup dedicated just to this board game, which is, I'll tell you everything you need to know. And people were really into it. You could laser in, you could make alliances, you could, you can choose if you want to just be laser focused in this game for like the entire 8 hours, read people's motives. And like, if that sounds good to you, then there's no better field to play in that space. And you have to be in. And if you're not in, then you're out. That's the unfortunate thing. Like the card game, you might have fun if you just casually. There is no casual playing of the board game.
It's true. All right, so that is everything from our Game of Thrones reviews. If you love Game of Thrones, definitely check these games out. If you're just a casual fan, take our advice, pick some of these games out that might work best for your group. Definitely don't jump out and buy them because it's a pretty detailed and major investment in both in time and money. But in general, it's been a good genre. It's been some decent games out there, and it's been a so-so series so far. All right, so until next time, this is Chris.
This is Anthony.
And this is Jason.
And we'll save you a seat on the Iron Throne.
You're listening to a proud member of the Dice Tower Network, dedicated to bringing podcasters together for the greater good of gaming. It's sort of like Voltron, but with better lip syncing. Find out more at dicetowernetwork.com.